I'm going to give a brief description of my perch on Intel to lead in our conversation. I think Intel is one of these, is in the kind of company that we want to understand because it's been so great for so long and is so valuable and so big, but that bigness and greatness presents a problem of its own in that it's very hard to grow such a very big company. And that's your job as CEO. And so I want to ask you to start with, at a high level, how do you do that?
Well, you're right. I mean, you're a $55 billion company, so, growth by 100 million even is nothing in that number. So you really have to think about growth with Bs. And if you don't have that, then you're not really growing in a measurable way. I think you really have to just think about the core businesses that you have. And for us, we as you said, we've been so great around the PC, but growing underneath the PC for many, many years, more than 10 years now, has been the data center. The data center, IoT, and memory. And several of us have been working on those, for 10, 15 years in some cases. And so what you do is you just grab those and say, how do I accelerate those? How do I take those, which are, a couple $1 billion businesses to $15, $16 billion businesses, and how do I grow those at a faster rate? And that's really how we changed the strategy of the company.
With the assumption that your historically great market, the PC market, is in a slow, steady decline for everybody, not just for you.
Yeah, we built this strategy around a mid-single-digit decline of the PC so that we took a realistic view of that market.
I want to sort of, I want to warn you, I want to geek out a little bit on the business because it's important. You mentioned three things: data center, memory, and IoT.
Yes.
Help us understand what data center means, because my understanding is that data center means servers, which are essentially really good PCs, and so how is it different? I'm sure what I said made you wince, so please put the finer touches on my raw description.
Well, at the most basic level, you're right. They are computing units that are much more powerful, tend to have much more compute capability, much higher levels of memory, much different bandwidth. But when we talk about the data center in today's world, we really talk about the cloud. And what I've tried to do is tie the PC, which was our prior core business, the data center, IoT, and memory all together into one really strategy that all feed on itself. And it's all based on, as the world's become a cloud-based world. So, all the things that you hear about artificial intelligence and machine learning, those are all based on things connecting to a cloud. You have to get all of this data from things, whether that thing is a PC, the phone in your pocket, the car you drive. All of these things have to connect up. They then have to go up to the cloud, and all that data gets up there. It has to be stored in memory. So memory is important. So all of these things tie together into one strategy that feeds on itself.
And at the risk of being too simplistic, again, my assumption in the way I asked the question would be that winning the data center would have been a no-brainer for Intel because of the similarities to the PC market. But what I'm hearing you say is that it's more complicated than that. Is that right?
It is. Because the things that drive the computing performance in the data center are a bit different. And that's where we've invented things like 3D XPoint, which is a high-speed, non-volatile memory that will really allow the data center to store huge amounts of data very cost-effectively and have access to that data at very high speed. So let's take a machine learning example like driving your autonomous car. The autonomous car comes up on something, and it has to be able to basically score itself against whatever that object is. Having high-speed memory that it can go access what those images are, what those trainings are very important. And that's one of the differences between the data center and, say, your standard PC.
And, as I was preparing for our conversation, and I've read about the things that you've done in the memory business, including you're converting some of your fabs to manufacture memory. And I thought to myself, wow, this is interesting. If I'm remembering my business history correctly,
yes.
Intel's seminal moment was getting out of the memory business, yes?
It was, and so here's what you have to think about Intel. Intel's a great manufacturer, and it's a great manufacturer. The core of it, what we do is we manufacture silicon. And what we need to do is always find silicon that we can differentiate on, that truly drives a performance or cost or something that really differentiates us. Because if you're just going to be in a commodity business, we're not really structured. We're not based in all the low-cost geos. We're not structured that way, and we're always doing leading-edge technology. What's happened in memory is as the cloud becomes so important, and we can talk about that in a second here, memory has become more important again. And we started working on some very unique proprietary memories about 10 years ago, this 3D XPoint. And so it makes sense to go back into that manufacturing now.
I mean, this is I think like an amazing moment, simply because of how important the exit was, right? This was Andy Grove's moment as a CEO, correct?
It was, and really I'd take it back to what Andy taught us is adapt or die, right? And so he adapted. The memory market had become a commodity. It had become standard, and it was just being a cost battle, and it was time to adapt to the product that was unique. I'm doing the same set of things. I'm moving us to the higher performance CPUs, the higher performance GPUs with our Xeon Phi, and the unique proprietary memory devices. We're adapting.
And there was a third thing, which was the Internet of Things. Some people. I'm someone who has written that it's a faddish term, but you're very passionate about it. So explain how this can be. And I hope everyone heard Brian say, for us to increase revenue by $100 million doesn't really move the needle. How can Internet of Things be something that moves the needle with B's, not M's?
Absolutely. The Internet of Things is already a $2 billion business plus
for Intel.
For Intel, it's growing at double digits in the teens, and so it's a good, healthy business that we think would be multiple $billion bigger as we exit this decade. But let me give you an example. Here's the estimates. The estimates by 2020, 50 billion devices will be connected to the internet. Those are all kinds of devices that are out there. Now let's take a look at the average user, like anybody here in the audience. 2020, the estimates are you'll generate about 1.5 gigabytes a day of data. So in your daily usage of posting pictures to Facebook and whatever else is out there during that time, you're going to generate about 1.5 gigabytes a day. The average autonomous car, about 40 gigabytes a minute of data will be generated from that autonomous car. The average autonomous drone, about 20 gigabytes of data. Something like our Replay, which is the virtual reality system we're doing in sports, it generates about 200 gigabytes a minute of data. So what's going to happen is as the cloud becomes dominated by machines generating all this data, that's where the Internet of Things takes off. That's where machine learning will then take all of that data, your driving data, the drone data, your sports data, and start to learn from it. And that's why all of this is so important. That's why memory, the things, and the data center are all connected.
So if Intel, before you became CEO, it's been well reported, and you've discussed that Intel missed the shift to mobile that was so necessary. Intel wasn't the critical player in cell phones that it had been in PCs. If I'm hearing you correctly, your job is to make sure that Intel is critical in these new things. But as we saw with mobile, it's not like Intel didn't try. There's no guarantees. So how do you see where I'm going?
Yeah, no, I get it. So let's go back and take a look at mobile. Intel took a very different approach at mobile. We didn't go towards the LTE route. We took the WiMAX road. We missed the old conversion of 3G and 4G. And so we were out of the mobile.
Excuse me, LTE was to dumb it down, was a cell phone technology, whereas WiMAX was a PC communication technology.
Yeah, that's a good way to think about it, right? Bottom line is, when we bought Infineon, we made the conversion back to the standard 3G and 4G modems. We've put a lot of effort now into that. Our modems are world class. So we think we have the connectivity. we thought about what's the right thing to do. And I think if you think about mobile in a much broader picture, if you just go for the cell phone business now, you're kind of shooting behind the puck.
Sure.
The mobile business is moving. It's the biggest mobile device you're going to have in 5 years is going to be your car. The car is going to have more connectivity and be putting out more data than your cell phone ever did. And so we're really targeting to where we think mobile is moving to. We're targeting towards these machines that have to be connected. An autonomous car without connectivity is not going to be useful. It's got to have access to that data center. And so we're going to focus our mobile towards where we think mobile is moving to, these devices.
I'd like you to share with everybody. You're in operations. Your career has been in operations. Your predecessor's career was in marketing at Intel. Yet you've been very public that marketing is very important, and in fact, you've given a lot of thought to how you communicate with customers. Can you share that with everybody?
Sure. So the first thing is when you're an engineer and you believe that marketing is important, you go hire really qualified people to be around you because you're not going to do it well. So I hired Steve Fund out of the consumer products business, right, of Staples, and just a great guy. The second thing is you go talk to the customers. You spend a lot of time with customers. And I don't consider that marketing. If you look at most of our customers, whether it be the PC customers like Dell and Lenovo and HP, or the Internet of Things customers where you talk to the GEs and the Honeywells and those, it's really, I make those conversations engineer to engineer. What I do is talk about the product. I don't talk about the hype. I talk about what solutions we can provide. How we'll engineer together these devices. And when I do that, it's more of a discussion engineer to engineer. And I'm very comfortable in that space. So I don't take on a marketing persona. I don't think I could ever do that.
And Brian, talk a little bit more about how you spend your time as CEO and how it's different from your previous role. And you're going to hate me for asking this, but do you like it? Do you like being a CEO?
So let's start with the beginning. So when I ran all of Intel's manufacturing, I lived in Arizona, which is where our largest manufacturing site is. I came to work every day in shorts and a T-shirt, because it didn't really matter. I was working with the factory guys, and they were all over the world, and it was great. I loved that job. It was probably the funnest job I've ever had. I still believe Intel's one of the best manufacturers on the planet. It's a great American manufacturing company. Still, between 50 and 70% of our product is manufactured in the U.S.
That's an amazing statistic.
A rarity, right?
Yeah.
CEO is very different. I have to dress nicer. I don't get to come to work in shorts and a T-shirt anymore.
You have to sit on stage and talk to people like me.
Yeah, I have to go to board meetings. I tell you, a lot of the to-do part of the job, no, I genuinely don't like. But what I love is I'm a technologist at heart. And you have the world's greatest technology company. I can go build anything I want. And so I get huge joy out of the problems we solve. As we target 7 nanometers, for example, in Moore's Law, driving Moore's Law, the problems we're trying to solve and what we're trying to do at 5 nanometers, it's just so fun to do and see that level of engineering across the company. So I get great joy out of that part of the job.
You're a career guy. Intel has a famous culture, a very distinct culture. Yet you've had to make changes to the culture. Would you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. I have massively changed the culture at Intel. If you take a look at my staff, 25 to 30, depending on the time, 25 to 35% of the leaders of the company now are from outside of Intel within the last 3 or 4 years. And so we are really trying to bring a lot of change into the culture. And really it's about the speed, the dynamics of the products. I don't believe you can go build autonomous cars without great people from the car industry. You can't go build, drones and things like that without people from that industry. So we're trying to go get people from outside what is our standard, which is, silicon and PC. And we've really tried to expand our leadership team.
And how's that going so far? I mean, how do they play nice with each other? Do you have to be the referee?
For a company that if you take a look at prior to me coming, I think maybe we had one person on staff at any one time that was from outside the company, and that person usually didn't survive more than 3 years.
They didn't talk much, right?
Yes. It's been hard, but and there are occasional times I've had to referee, but for the most part, the team sees that it's stronger as a result, and I think it's really gelling over the last year or so.
And you made can you very briefly explain the Altera acquisition? It was a $16 billion acquisition last year. Why did you do it? How, and is it integrating well?
So let's start. First, it's integrating fantastically. And in fact, it's beating the forecast we had for growth of the business. We've accelerated several of the products about getting them onto leading edge silicon. And that was the real premise of this. Was there were three premises. One, that we could bring Moore's law to this. And if you think about FPGAs, they're large seas of gates. So they're basically lots of transistors. And those are going to benefit from Moore's law. And so we believe we could bring Moore's law to the base FPGA business and accelerate the growth of the company.
And so this is tangential to the microprocessor business. It would have been a business that you weren't in before.
It's tangential. It's used for all kinds of communications and networking products and things like that, separate from the CPU. So that was the base business, and that was a large part of the growth, is we thought we could accelerate that. Second one was there are certain algorithms within the data center that if you put and you provide a special bus between the CPU and an FPGA, you can take those algorithms, put them right on silicon. So big data analysis. If you want to do big data calculations, you can take those algorithms, those who do algorithms, put them right on the FPGA, provide a unique bus to the CPU, and you can get speed ups of 20-30% performance on those products. So we are now shipping samples of an FPGA and Xeon processor in one package.
He did say he loves the technology. You heard him say that a few minutes ago, right? I'm going to jump around a little bit before I come to all of you. Tomorrow, I'm going to host a panel, a tribute to Bill Campbell, who we lost recently, who was a legendary coach to many people in the Valley. And of course, just before Bill Campbell died, we lost Andy Grove. And I know you had Intel had a memorial for him recently. Can you share an anecdote with everybody about that?
Losing Andy for a lot of us was tough. Most of my career, I had always had him. 6 months before he passed away, I met with Andy and talked to him about the strategy and where I thought the industry was going. So for many of us, it was tough. It was really neat. There were actually two memorials. One we did on site, mostly Intel people, but it brought back Craig Barrett, Gordon Moore, a lot of the old Intel garb that was there. And then that evening we did an industry one at the Computer History Museum, which brought out everybody. And it was just so neat to see everybody get together, whether they were competitors of Andy at the time or, dear friends. They still all respected him, and it was just really neat to have everybody come out.
Did he challenge you and use any colorful language when you shared your strategy ideas with him 6 months?
Yeah,
before he passed?
Not 6 months. The biggest one I remember was a long time ago when I was trying to get I was a new engineer at Intel, and I was trying to get showers so we could run at lunch. And I said I tried to use it. Intel's supposed to be a great place to work, and he looked at me in the audience and he said, the key word there is work. And he told me there would never be showers at Intel. So there are showers at Intel.
Yeah, I assumed there were, and I was going to ask you that. I think you've arrived in life when Andy Grove challenges you with the word bullshit involved or something like that, right?
Yes.
Let me know what questions you all have. Okay, I see one way up in front. Please tell us who you are, Stephen.
Stephen Wolf Pereira at Newstar. I'm curious, when you talk about IoT, a lot of people focus on the hype, but there's a huge security angle to this as well. And so when you start thinking about all these devices connected to the cloud, what's your perspective on how do you secure all these? Because certainly it creates the opportunity for lots of bad things to happen as well.
You're absolutely right. And I believe that especially some of them that are going to be taking very personal data that's in your house or on your body or tied to your family, or even just in your car. It's going to know where you are, right? Do you want everybody on the planet to be able to hack in and know where you are, and that you're not home even, right? And those things will know even how many people are in your car. potentially who's in your car. So there's a lot of confidential information here. It's a great opportunity, though, because I believe to really secure this, you're going to need data or security at every end. So you're going to need security on those devices at the edge, and security at various points along the way in the cloud, right? So that's a great opportunity for companies like Intel. We can partner with companies like Cisco and others to really drive the security across there. But yes, it's going to have to. There's a lot of work, and the real key, I think, is going to be getting security standards. How do we really make sure the security protocols and expectations are set on these devices?
Say a little bit more about that. How far along is the industry, and what is Intel's role?
Well, Intel's role is what we are trying to do is in all the silicon that we build in, we're trying to build those security features. So everything from secure enclaves that protects the confidential information to secure networks and how the encryption of certain data goes across. So we've been working with all the industry standards, and there's a variety of them now working on IoT standards across, both in with the communication links, right? So making sure that all the devices can talk to each other, but then also how do they do that in a secure way?
And right there, please.
Hi, I'm Telly Whitney with the Anita Borg Institute. You and Intel made a very public commitment to bringing more diversity into both education all the way to the company. And you've also taken it seriously inside of Intel, measuring at every step what you're doing. I'm curious, you've been doing this for a couple of years, and you've really set the standard in many ways for the industry on this topic. What do you see of the impact it has on Intel, and positive, negative, others? Any comments?
So thank you. I mean, we're making great progress. If you take a look at our progress in women and African Americans, Hispanics, the growth rate of them, the numbers, population levels, we've made huge progress. We've more than doubled our hiring rate, and we've increased the promotion rate. We're now to a point where I think the real key is going to be how do we get women and underrepresented minorities into the right leadership positions, and so they can lift up and be a part of the lifting up of all the rest of the population. That's a hard problem we're trying to struggle with right now. I think the big learning we've had is getting just the raw numbers is something you can solve fairly quickly, but getting the leadership pipeline, getting the growth of the leadership within the company to the numbers that we need to have is a very difficult challenge, and we're trying to figure out how to do that. Because you could go out and just promote everybody. You could just take the top 200 women and the top 50 African Americans and say, I'm going to just promote you. But if you don't also give them more responsibility and more scope, it's meaningless, and it doesn't really drive a change in the company. And that's what we're having to try and figure out, is how to broaden their scope and change their jobs as well.
So if I could paraphrase, it sounds like you're saying that it's a nascent initiative within Intel. Too soon to say what the impact is, or even if you're being successful?
I'd say what we said was we'd have this done by 2020. I'd say we're not as far as we'd like to be, but we're far enough. So I'm still confident we can do this by 2020. How it's going to change the company, I think it's way too soon, because a lot of this has just happened over the last 2 years. And I think we can start to see more diverse groups and more. I sit in meetings. One of the things I love to do is I go to customer meetings or have customers come meet me. I'm the only one who walks in with 1 or 2 women and an African American leader in a room of all men. And so I do see a shift even just in how I present Intel to the industry at times.
Brian, you're the CEO of a $55 billion sales company. You don't go to work in your shorts and T-shirts anymore. And so when you do something like propose hosting a fundraiser for Donald Trump and then it doesn't happen, that becomes a news headline. Can you what happened there?
Sure. I'll tell you what really happened. Originally, it was supposed to be a conversation about issues. And I'm passionate about these issues, the issues of diversity, the issues of making America strong in manufacturing, making us competitive in tax. It was supposed to be a discussion about issues with a small group of us. It turned into a fundraiser, and that's when we backed out. And that I won't do. I really don't think people in the tech industry, our job is not to get behind one candidate. Our job is to get behind issues that are important to society or issues that are important to this industry. So when it became a topic, a meeting that was going to be a fundraiser and supporting of a person rather than discussion of issues, I said, that's not for us. Now, the press, oh well.
The press will do what the press will do,
I
right?
understand that. It's one of the other lessons I've had as CEO.